Hello. Hi, Rachel.
Hi, Roberto.
Great to see you again.
Yes, good to see you too. Happy New Year.
You too. I'm super excited to do this live with you because we were planning this for a long time. Actually, and it's the first of 2025, so it's very special for me too. And I would also like to thank the people who is connecting to this live event, and thank you for the people who is connecting, of course, and of course to you for your time, because I know how the beginning of the year usually is very hectic, and
Mhm.
probably this is no different. So thank you so much, Rachel, for finding the time,
Yeah,
and
thanks for
thank you
having me.
also. Thanks. Thank you also for the people, because this is the time is the only thing that we cannot go back, so we have to make the most out of it and make it worth. So what we are not going to do in the conversation is interact live with the people, but we invite everyone who is listening to drop any question that they may have in the chat. In the middle of the conversation, we are going to check the chat, but for the beginning, we are just having the conversation, you and I, and then we'll go back. So I'm going to close everything here. One and two. And so I'm 100% with you. So first of all, I would like to make a little introduction of how we met, because it's really interesting. It's also one of the beautiful things of we have always pros and cons, but virtual communicating virtually and through this medium has a beautiful thing that you are in Boston, I'm in Barcelona. We are many hours away, a lot of kilometers, and we met in May 2023 thanks to a leadership program in which you were the facilitator of a module, which was amazing. I'm not going to do much spoiler on that. It was so amazing. And then we connected, we kept in touch. And we thought, since we both love the topic of new ways of work and communication virtually, we said, why don't make this live event and talk about these things? So this is a little bit fast forward, and I'm super excited to do this. And my first question for you will be, since I didn't do any spoiler, what's your story, Rachel, and what brings you to this world of virtual communication and with all the projects that you have?
Yeah, great. Well, yeah, again, thanks for having me. I think it's always really fun to get to share a conversation that we would have maybe privately, but live with our
Yeah.
audiences. So, what a great opportunity. My story's a little atypical. I think, currently I'm co-founder and CEO of a company called Virtual Sapiens, and we use AI to help people improve their communication and communication confidence. And as a CEO of an AI startup, it's a very fast-paced world, and it's a really fascinating blend between AI, cutting-edge AI technology, and foundational coaching principles and communication science. But where I came from, in terms of my background, um, is interesting in that I used to be a professional ballet dancer, so I have a performance background. And what's unique about ballet is that it's all nonverbal, right?
Yeah.
Like you go and see a ballet and none of the dancers are talking. It's all body language, it's all presence.
Yeah.
And that for me is a big theme in my career, even though my career on paper seems like it's all over the place. The theme of being able to communicate effectively and developing body awareness so that you know that your behaviors are pairing with what is coming out of your mouth, right? That's when we're at our most effective as a communicator. And especially when we're trying to communicate virtually, that becomes even more important,
Yes.
right? And that's a lot of the work that we're doing at Virtual Sapiens.
Mm. I'm so curious, and we'll go deeper, I'm sure, in the conversation on that. And there is one thing that you mentioned, which reminds me of your definition of presence. Can you go a little bit more deeper into that? What's presence
Yeah,
for
yeah. So there are a few things. Presence is a fascinating concept, and people do have different definitions of what it
you?
means, what it is, and what it isn't. I like to view presence as when our full expression, right? Again, full expression being nonverbal, verbal, and vocal behaviors,
Yeah.
aligns with our intention. And through that, we're able to authentically connect with others. And the three main tenets of that definition, again, are expression, alignment, intention, and then, of course, authenticity, right? And I think oftentimes what can happen when people are communicating is that their intention may be one thing, but their delivery may be something else. And then there's a disconnect, and the message that you're wanting or intending to share is not the one that you're actually sending, right? It's not what's landing with your audience. And then, right, as a result, we haven't had the impact as communicators that we're looking to have.
Yeah. And it's beautiful because you mentioned one thing, which is the awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we are not even aware of the message that we are sending. And for example, your background is amazing. And I see a lot of intention in putting the background, which is not the virtual background, for if someone is wondering, is this a real one or
Yeah.
not? It's real. And you put a lot of intentions because you want to give a message which is aligned with what you are going to say. So what do you think is the most overlooked thing, or the thing that we are not aware because we just don't know?
I mean, I think there's a lot. I think there's a lot of things that we overlook. I think, especially virtually, there has been a level of casualness that's been adopted, I think, as a factor of, going through the pandemic. It was very difficult. It was very traumatic for many people in terms of, not having an option other than video to connect, right? And video can be an exhausting channel of communication, especially if you're not using it properly, right? And so now, right, post-COVID, when there's a blend of communicating in person, but a lot of communicating over video, it's amazing to see that people aren't taking these opportunities of virtual connection for what they are.
Yeah.
And people still are showing up in a way that doesn't represent themselves properly, right? And at the end of the day, that's the issue. It's not, oh, I need to show up in one specific way. It's more like, how do you want people to perceive you? How do you want to show, like, what is the presence you want to have? And is the way you're showing up aligning with that?
Exactly. It's the intention again.
Yeah.
What's my goal for this meeting? Do I want to have a casual meeting? Will it be a formal meeting? Are we on the same level? Are there differences? Do I want to reduce the differences? There are so many things. And one thing that you also mentioned in your story is coaching. And this also reminds me of the role of a coach, which is to show the person how the things are coming across, just to be as a mirror. So I show you this, now you become aware and you decide what to do. We are not telling you smile more, just smile because you have to smile all the time. No, not at all. It's what do I want to share? If I'm sharing bad news, you don't have to smile probably.
Right.
And if you're sharing the Happy New Year, maybe you have to be more whatever, or maybe put a background. So yeah. And this brings me also to one question, which is, why do you think this is so important for everyone, not just for company? And why this moment?
I'm so glad you asked, because especially now that it feels like AI is just like coming at us from every single angle.
Yeah.
Different companies have different work policies around whether you're showing up physically or not. Communication remains the number one most important skill to develop as a human working with other humans, right? And not only is it important because that's how we can ensure progress is happening, and that's how we can make sure people are on the same page, but also that's how we can differentiate ourselves as individuals. Because if we throw these tenets of communication out the window and we're like, it doesn't matter, like I'll just kind of like sort of show up, like it doesn't, my framing doesn't matter, I'll just throw on whatever t-shirt, if we keep saying this thing like it doesn't matter, we end up lowering the experience across the board, and as a result it's just a detriment to everyone's time. right? If we're not investing in understanding how we want to communicate, right? Again, how we want to show up, how we want our messages to land, we're just wasting so much time.
Yeah. And also reminds me what you say, that usually when there is a problem, the root cause, not always, but very often, the root cause is communication.
Oh yeah.
So, and of course, now we're talking about talking face to face through medium, which is Zoom or whatever. But the same apply with emails. The same
Yeah.
apply with chat. We have so many channels, and again, being intentional, and even I would say choosing the channel. Sometimes we can write a message on chat. Sometimes we may want to use an email. Sometimes we want to call, and sometimes we will want to make a video call.
Yeah.
And one more thing that comes to my mind is to adapt to the other person, and again to see what's the preferred way of communication of someone. Maybe they I just mentioned exhaustion. Maybe they get exhausted at so many calls. Maybe you have to
Yeah.
just forget about the all these things and just call, phone
Mm-hmm.
call.
Mm-hmm.
So, and again, it brings me back the idea of the intention that you shared, and the message. What do I want to share? Who is
Mm-hmm.
my recipient, and what in how which way I want to get across to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that like channel selection, or channel intention, I don't know what you want to call it, but yeah, it's like, I think this is another thing that happened during the pandemic, is that people just were doing video calls for every single thing.
Yes.
And right, so that's a mismatch in strategy, or a lack thereof. You're not
Absolutely.
using the channel properly. Like, video is very powerful for moments where you want to be interacting with someone else, where you want to be seeing how they're reacting to what you're saying, to
Yes.
ideas, etc. Like, building trust and rapport, video is incredible for that.
Mm.
But if it's like a quick check-in, a quick update, a quick question, it doesn't have to necessarily be a video. If it's a huge company-wide update, like, maybe a one-way video would be more effective than like having every single person have to show up on video, knowing that like you can only see 9 people at a time anyways, right?
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned one thing, which is building trust and rapport. This is so important. What do you think is the challenge of building trust and rapport virtually? And maybe if doing this virtually have some upside, if what's the upside?
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the biggest barriers, so I'll start by saying I think that it's absolutely possible to build trust and rapport over video.
Yeah.
Very, very, very possible, right? Virtual Sapiens is a remote first company, and yet we have many clients and customers who trust us deeply and who we have wonderful rapport with, and we have very successful relationships as a result, many of whom I've never met in person. You and I, Roberto, right? Like, I think we
Exactly.
have a fantastic friendship and relationship, and it's been 100% virtual.
Yes.
I think the biggest barrier to that actually comes from a, a lack of expectations and skill, right? Education, training that supports being able to use this channel effectively, right? Because it's very hard to build trust and rapport
Yeah.
with a team if only 3 out of 6 are showing up on video,
Oh yeah.
right? There's something very unsettling about having a conversation with someone over video when they don't have their video on. Now, if that person's like not comfortable showing up on video for a number of reasons, like, that needs to be discussed, right? There are a number
Mm.
of reasons why they might not be comfortable, but it should be discussed and understood in terms of like why they're not showing up on video, versus all of the things that might start flying around your head when
Yeah.
the other person doesn't show up and you don't know why. Of course you're going to go to kind of more negative things like, oh, they don't respect me, they don't respect this meeting, they don't care, it doesn't matter to them, right? And that negative self-talk just tends to like really go rampant when
Yeah.
you're not getting any feedback.
Yes.
And that, I mean, where does trust has no place if you're not able to interact with that person on equal footing.
Absolutely. And this reminds me of one thing that it's an amazing practice actually, and especially for virtual teams, which is to make a team agreement. How do you want to communicate? Are there any barriers? Maybe the person has a sloppy Wi-Fi at his home. They cannot connect. They're shaking all the time. They put video, it won't work. But maybe you don't know. Maybe they're moving to some place and they're on the mobile or whatever. And so this is again goes to the beginning of how do we want to relate to each other?
Mm-hmm.
And if we have disagreement, okay, I want everyone with the camera on. Okay, if you can say why, and then I'm not making stories in my head.
Right. And it goes back to your point, Roberto, of like at the end of the day, it's still communication. How
Yes.
are you right? There's so much more to a communication event than the event itself. How have people been prepared for that event? What dialogue has happened to make sure everyone comes into the event knowing what to expect and what is expected of them? Right. So there's a very high level, and this is the same for in-person meetings, though,
Yes.
right? Like if we rewind to before COVID, it's not like meetings were not a problem, right? Meetings were still a big challenge for companies because people were spending all day in relatively unproductive meetings or meetings that didn't need to happen, meetings that could have been an email.
Yeah. Yeah. And reminds me of one thing which you remember. No, that's it's so easy to have a meeting. You just have a click, and maybe you wing it. But then you think, would I ever wing an in-person meeting? No. I probably will prepare. I will
Yeah.
go there 5 minutes before. I will make sure that I have my time, and I will be in the right space. I will not. I will go to the bathroom. I will have my glass of water. All
Mm-hmm.
this kind of thing. All the preparation. And this brings me up one super important thing besides the training, which is essential. The preparation. What do you think is so important about preparing for a meeting? Which tips maybe you could give to the people who are listening to this conversation?
Yeah, it's interesting. Preparation and practice, I think, are two of the most difficult things for people to do because it just requires extra time. And a lot of
Yes.
people don't feel like they have extra time, right? And the more it's interesting, like sometimes I think there's this intermediary period between being a professional and then being like the highest level professional. And when you're the highest level professional, like you actually understand the value of rehearsal practice and preparation. But when you're in this kind of middle tier, sometimes people make allowances that then affect the outcome of their work. But in terms of like preparing for something, it's I go back to my experience as a dancer,
Yeah.
and there's always a certain amount of experience and skill that you can fall back on and you can trust once you're an experienced professional. However, in order for you to know that you're showing up with your best foot forward and able to handle unexpected things that may arise during that meeting, you have to have clarity in terms of the main messages and the main goals that you have for that meeting. Like, what do you want to make sure your audience or your participants leave that 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour with? How can you make sure that that 1 point or those 3 points are being kind of hammered repeatedly over the course of that hour? And what is the structure of this meeting going to be anyways, and what is your role in it? Like just understand, having clarity around the role that you're going to have in the meeting and what you would like your audience to leave with in terms of what you've imparted. I think yes, whether it's 5 minutes, you can just go over that quickly. That's great. If it's like a bigger deal, if it's a keynote, et cetera, you're going to have to spend a lot more time on that. So it's all relative, I think, to the number of times that you might be doing this meeting or this communication event, your level of comfort and experience with it, and how the level of uniqueness it is or it has for you.
Yeah. It's somehow it reminds me of what's the outcome that I want in
Yeah.
this meeting. What do I want the people to take out from here? And then again and again going back. And one thing that would also add, which is very easy, and it's like even 2 minutes. In 2 minutes, if we have 2 minutes in between one meeting and the other, we can just walk up, go
Yeah.
walk. Just even 1 minute walking can change your state of mind completely.
Yeah.
And do a breathing and think, how do I want to show up to this meeting? How do I want these people to remember me? How do I want to be seen? And that combined with the objective. So I have this objective, this is my goal, and this is how I want to come across. and I prepare and I breathe, which always, by the way, we forget to breathe,
Yeah.
especially on video.
Yes, yes. Yeah, being on video can feel like such a almost like an out of body experience. You forget that you have this physical presence, right? And in the program that I run with IMD and most of my programs, I do what I call a physical anchoring
Oh yeah,
exercise, right? Which is exactly what you said, where again, it doesn't have, it can be 30 seconds,
yes,
right? It doesn't have, and you can do it actually while you're in the meeting itself. A deep breath in and out, pressing your feet into the floor, right? Opening up your posture. There are all these little things we can do to bring ourselves back into our bodies, bring ourselves back into the present moment, take a breath, right? Especially if we are in a meeting where maybe our sympathetic nervous system is more triggered, right? And where our heart rate is rising, or maybe we're getting sweaty palms. Like these are ways that your or messages your body is sending you saying like, hey, we're a little stressed, we're a little nervous. And while it's unrealistic to expect to never be stressed or nervous in a meeting, what is very powerful is to know how to handle yourself
yes,
in moments like that so that you can regain control, because that's what you need to be able to deal with those moments effectively.
yeah. That's beautiful, and it comes again to the part we see. We are not talking about technology. We are talking about awareness of our emotion. We are talking about uh, stopping and seeing, feeling our body, even if you are talking to video. And one thing that now that you said that if you are feeling like this, it's and if we notice the next time it's easier because
Yeah,
now you know the feeling. You catch yourself, and when you get the habit, maybe you can even say, "Okay, I will ask a question," and then when I feel that I'm feeling a little bit stressed or up, I ask a question and I take the time to breathe while the person is answering the question. Of course, I'm listening, but at the same time, I'm calming down.
yeah, 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 definitely. It's a
Yeah,
muscle
yeah,
and it has to be developed.
absolutely. And so this brings me. I'm super curious because you mentioned uh, a couple of times the work that you're doing at Virtual Sapiens. So far, we've been talking about what's in, let's say, what's in for the individual and why it's so important for a person. But there is also a connection with companies and with a broader picture. And
Mm.
I would love to hear more about what's going on, what's a project we are looking into at this moment and for the future.
Yes. So, of course, as I mentioned earlier, right, Virtual Sapiens is an AI-based company. We've been around for 4 years, so before the huge
Yeah,
ChatGPT craze. But it's just such a fast-paced world. And what we're really excited about now is increasing the feeling of kind of realistic conversations that you can practice with our AI.
mm,
And so, what sets us apart is that our AI, similar to what you said earlier in terms of the role of a coach, our AI is basically like a supercharged mirror. And the AI will reflect your behaviors back at you. We have a ton of metrics and development in terms of the nonverbal. So a lot of those blind spots people have, our AI can actually be like, oh, hey, did you know that like during that call, you had your hands are constantly all over your face or whatever, and that's a
yeah,
nonverbal tell. Like that's telling people that you're slightly unsettled and nervous and that you're not as calm and composed and in control, right? It's a distraction. So what's really interesting about our where we're going with our product is that if you can now have these customized conversations with our AI, the AI becomes a conversation partner as well as a coach. So whereas before, users used to maybe run through a presentation or upload a video or answer some simple questions and then get the feedback, now you're interacting with the AI in the conversation itself, right? And the AI shows up as someone you're cold calling or a direct report who you have to give critical feedback to, and that person is very defensive, right? And you get to practice these really tough conversations, some of which we're talking about, right? Some of them are virtual. um, and then you get to have pretty granular feedback from the AI. And the point, just to be clear, is we're not looking to replace every single human coach. um, I think that there's such value in having the human element of coaching and insight and guidance, And where our platform comes in is as a practice and reinforcement tool, right? And that's usually the part that can be tricky to ensure is happening.
Yeah. Yeah. So what I hear is it's like a way to scale. Maybe with a coach you can do it once, but with this
Yeah.
amazing tool, which by the way I tried the preview and it was amazing actually, and with the pace that AI is progressing, I'm sure there will be or particularly real time, which is always the with the voice mode in
Yeah.
ChatGPT and all these things. Sometimes you are asking, then you wait. So I'm sure it will be more and more. It's just a matter of time, and you can try and try and try and try, even for a video, for a presentation of 2 minutes. Maybe how many times you have to practice that. Of course, if it's an important pitch,
Yeah.
and you cannot have a coach listen to you every single time.
Right.
So this is an amazing way to scale that, because the coach may uh, give you the fundamentals, hear what you say, guide you. Of course, we can see what's important to you, all the coaching process. But then
Yeah.
once you have your objective, okay, go again, 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 and in the muscle, you do the repetition. The more repetition you do, the more it works.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Right. Right. Yeah. Like, you know, a concrete example would be like you use our platform, you go through a role play, and then the AI gives you feedback and says, you're using too many hand gestures, right? And so that's the AI reflecting the behavior back at you. It's just saying, by
Yeah.
the way, this is what you did. And then you are either by yourself or with a colleague or with a coach, if you're fortunate enough to have a real human coach to help you. That's where you work on like, okay, so how, like, what is an appropriate level of hand gestures? How can I reduce my hand gestures so that it's not becoming a distraction or it's not too much? Similarly, if the AI is like, you're not using enough hand gestures, right? So having both is obviously the ideal, but we have to realize that, yeah, not everyone is going to be able to afford a human coach. They're expensive, right? And
Yeah.
of course, as they should be, they're very valuable, but AI also opens up access to coaching.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm curious, of all these things, what's the most the unexpected thing, the unexpected feedback that people get? So a
Oh,
big aha.
I think I will say like the hand gestures one, I think is a lot,
Yeah.
is frequently a surprise. And that's because people get contradictory information a lot about hand gestures. Like I've known people who have been told to never use hand gestures.
Well,
And I'm like, well, from who? And they're like, oh, a colleague or a boss. And you're like, well, like a blanket, like never use hand gestures. I'm like, okay, so, and then they get feedback from the AI where the AI is like, oh, you should be using hand gestures effectively. You're not using them at all, right? And that's so they're like, oh, I was literally told not to. So that's something that often surprises people, is that almost being given permission to use hand gestures is like a surprise for a lot of people, more
wow,
people than I would have expected.
wow. And this connects me also with what you said in the beginning, which is giving information and teaching people,
Mhm.
because the basis of the hand gesture is actually based on how our brain works.
Yeah.
If we don't see the hands, and I see all the time hands down, what's
Yes.
that person doing? And what's behind? Are they typing a message? More and more with the virtual meetings, if I don't see the hands, and I see the eyes moving from one side to the other, I think, oh, okay, they're writing an email, they're chatting, whatever. And even if we think that we don't give anything away, so we can get away with multitasking. No,
Yeah.
people see that.
Yeah.
So as you again mentioned in the beginning, you start making all these theories in your head, and maybe they're just resting, but we don't see the hands. Who knows? Yes.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I like to talk about this idea of your audience's mental energy. Um, and you don't want people to be spending their limited mental energy and focus on things that are not related to the message you're sharing.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's true. Like if you can, and again, it's not like you have to be like, hands all, because there is such a thing as too many hand gestures.
Yeah.
But having yourself properly framed so that it's relatively easy to have a hand show in a frame or two just helps soothe your audience into knowing that, like, oh yeah, this is a conversation.
Yeah.
There's nothing else going on, and it refocuses their mental energy on where you need it, which is on your message, on the conversation you're having.
Absolutely. And this reminds me one more thing to add to that, which is the virtual background, which is something that I also hear sometimes, no, always use a virtual background. And I'm strongly, if we can, against using virtual background, because you know what's there. You are not imagining, oh, what, and then, sometimes where things get blurred out and then something appears and then, oh, what's there? And when you said that mental energy, I recognize myself that I always go there. And my attention goes to the flash of whatever it comes into the background. And I start wondering, what was that?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our brains are triggered by new information.
Yes.
Right. And so if you have a background that's constantly changing because of the way you're moving or because there's stuff moving in the background itself, you're like waving a red flag around for your audience to be like a cat and a light, like you're just doing yourself and your audience a disservice. And so, having a stable background, sometimes that does call for a virtual background if you're in a busy place, but just being aware of the fact that you're kind of, it's like self-sabotage a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, we cannot have always the perfect background. And again, it comes back to the team agreement. If we have an awful background, or if you have a crowded place, maybe it's better to have a background and not have the people go and come, because it's much more distracting.
Mm-hmm.
But then you can say, I'm going to use this because I'm here, I will distract you, or not. So again, the intention, as you mentioned, and how do I want to come across? How do we want to communicate? And then from that, you lose. Time flies. We're already half past an hour. So I would suggest, what about if we check the chat, if we have some question? If you have any question, by the way, with people who is connected, put it in the chat. Now it's the moment, of course. Let's see. Okay. Okay. Oh, hello, Said. Said connected says hi. Hi, Said. Thank you. Great to see you made it. Hi, Annette. Hello, Michelle. Oh, thank you so much, Michelle, for connecting. We are talking about coaching, and Michelle is an amazing coach. She was my trainer for one of the CTI training that I did. An amazing communicator also. And this is also, again, reminds me of how important it is, the communication, and especially in coaching. Now we are doing coaching virtually. So imagine something that has so much to do sometimes with the presence of the person and being the same place. And as we say in coaching, the geography is so important. And we can do the same on video. We can play with space again with the intention. Mm-hmm. It's exactly the same as you mentioned in the beginning. Thank you, Michelle, for connecting. Prakash, hello. And Hannah. Oh, hello, Hannah. Okay, so if you have more questions, leave them. We can go back in the end. Still, if we miss something, we will answer after the conversation. We will not miss anything. And now I'm curious, Rachel. We'll be talking a little bit about the Virtual Sapiens. I'm super curious about what you're more excited about for the coming year.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited about this level of interaction between our platform and other types of coaching. We've been very focused on partnering with other communication coaches and communication coaching firms in particular. But now that we've introduced AI as that conversation partner, and we have a much deeper ability in terms of being able to customize the feedback,
Oh,
we can actually partner with other coaches, career coaches, um, executive coaches, leadership coaches, sales coaches, certainly, right? And so I think that the expansion of our opportunity is really exciting to me. One really interesting pilot we're doing now is with Mount Sinai on bedside manner.
oh,
So Mount Sinai is a major hospital in North America, and it's like we think of these challenging conversations we often have to have at the workplace. And then when you think about some of the conversations doctors, physicians, the conversations they have to have, those are really hard conversations,
no,
right?
yes.
And the way they show up for that conversation is really critical to that person's experience and the way they receive the information. So it's certainly an honor to get to work with them in creating a program where we can support their physicians in training to communicate more effectively.
Yeah. And again, it reminds me of how you can scale these things. Again, with the partnering with an expert on the matter,
Mm-hmm.
and then with this information, you can extrapolate probably the best practice, let's say, and then try it again and again and again and again, because this is a conversation and maybe it's 2 minutes. No, you give a critical information to a
Yeah.
family, to a patient.
Mm-hmm.
The way you do it, I can imagine maybe it can make the difference in the mind of the person, and even in how they can take this challenge. So huge impact. And it's just one example. So I can imagine limitless situations.
Right. And it actually takes us back to the topic of rapport and trust. If so much of the way we show up to a conversation is the foundation of building trust with someone, especially when that's the main moment or opportunity you have to connect with them. And if the individual feels distracted or like they don't care or that their mind is somewhere else and they're just like throwing information like general information at you versus something for you specific, um, then the patient is also less likely to heed the doctor's advice,
Yeah.
right? There will be a level of distrust that the individual has, that the patient has, and that just cancels out a lot of the work or the value that the physician is there to have.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. And Rachel, in this, what's the biggest challenge that you're facing?
Well, there are many challenges of
Yeah. And
running a
as a
startup.
founder, I can
Yeah, it's
imagine.
definitely not for the faint of heart.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting because the excitement around AI is a blessing, but it's also a little bit of a curse, right?
Mm,
And so we're at a stage now, I think, in the adoption of AI where many companies are wondering, like, what can we do with AI ourselves now?
mm,
Maybe we don't need, like, can we just create our own AI chatbot?
uh-huh.
Maybe we don't need to use so and so's chatbot if we can just create our own. And so what we've built at Virtual Sapiens is very unique specifically because of the nonverbal aspects of communication, the computer vision metrics that we've developed. Those are patented. They took years to develop, and those are really hard to just recreate. And so that's an advantage for us, a competitive advantage and a distinguishing factor. But we still are met sometimes with, oh, well, oh, like for example, Microsoft Speaker Coach. Like we have Microsoft Speaker Coach, so isn't that like the same thing? And it's like, no, because that's a very general tool that provides very general, non-specific feedback. Um,
Yeah.
it's not the main. It's certainly not Microsoft's main product focus.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a beautiful example. And it reminds me also of all the tools. Now we have, for example, we have Zoom and we have to pay for Zoom. But
Yeah,
then we have Microsoft Teams,
right.
which comes with all the Office. So maybe someone in the future. And of course, all the tools, I think they're going up and up and up. It's only up. They're only getting better and better. But I also bet that will be something very specialized. For example, the example that you did with the doctor, so sensitive. I could not imagine using a generic tool for that.
Right.
So,
Right. Yeah.
and that's probably this again the difference. And it's beautiful also that because it's being democratized. So
Hmm.
maybe the basis will be available to everyone. But then, if you want to do something very specific, you mentioned sales, you mentioned the doctor, maybe coaching, maybe whatever, very specific case, then you see the value and then you are
Yeah.
willing to do more. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I think it's really so much is up in the air with it right now. The other challenge I'll say is on the security privacy, like we're a privacy first company. The way we process information is very local, right? So we don't send a lot to servers, which is a huge benefit for us. But there's a lot of companies are internally grappling with their own policies, and of course they have to be so careful about how their data is processed by some of these like OpenAI's
Yeah.
and other LLMs, of course. And so we do get caught up in that um, frequently, just because it's such a wild west. There's so much uncertainty, and there are like serious consequences to doing it wrong. And we were talking to a large client of ours the other day, and it was so interesting because they had done a company-wide survey of their employees' kind of attitudes towards AI. And it came back with a really interesting general answer, which was that, the employees felt that the company was actually too timid,
Oh.
too careful, so that it
Yeah.
was actually impeding their ability to like
Ah,
use the tools and like stay competitive and figure stuff out. Because they were like there was like a lockdown, they couldn't use anything,
yes. Yes.
right? And so that's like a really interesting topic in general, is like how companies, like, you have to kind of move forward and try things out, and like, but yes, you have to be safe,
Yeah.
right? So how do you, that's really hard, especially
Yes.
if it's like, oh my god, yeah, that's really hard.
Yeah. And I can definitely feel the struggle and even maybe the pain of doing all this because somehow you have to demonstrate one and again that you are safe. So,
Yeah.
and it takes maybe it even takes energy, but it's so important. and and also when you said that the people are more eager to try the tools, it's very interesting because I think it's one of the first time that some tools are being adopted first by consumers and then by companies. So imagine
Yeah.
the PC. The PC was first company. You
Yeah.
didn't have a PC at home,
Yeah.
but now it's the opposite. We had ChatGPT first on our even on our mobile. We were trying
Yeah.
the voice mode. I'm using ChatGPT for everything.
Yes, right. Right.
And now, of course, in the company is different because you have all this regulation and it's necessary.
Right.
Because if it was our own company, if we change our head, we will also be conservative.
Right.
So
Right.
I think it's a struggle
Yeah.
and exciting at the same time because you
Yeah.
can see what's coming out and you can see the future and then you say, okay, not yet, not yet. It has to pass through 3 more layers of security. Wait, it's coming.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really hard. That's really hard. It's hard for the large organizations. It's really hard for the startups who
Yes.
are just trying to, um, the responsible startups who have built their products in an intelligent and data secure way still have to go through these same hoops. Understandably, like, it makes sense. I understand, but it's still really hard.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And there is one thing that you mentioned, Rachel, when you talk about the company that popped into my mind about the change of the habits. And I'm curious to hear your view, which is now we have tools that can record the meetings and they can do summaries for us. They can extract the notes, all the kind of things. And I'm curious to hear what's your experience on that you are also in contact with many companies. Are these things being used widely? Are there any uh, blocks, or perhaps in the middle?
Yeah, I think I've been impressed with the number of companies that have adopted in-call recording bots. I I mean, recording conversations, it's interesting because I totally understand the value. I get the appeal of having every meeting automatically recorded and getting insights from them and summary notes and next step actions and stuff. That's a huge time savings. That's great. Um, but no one likes it. Like no one likes when a bot shows up and is like, I'm going to record this whole conversation, and you're kind of like, I mean, yeah, I understand that a lot of our phone calls are recorded anyways, but something about like the whole video being there, and
Yeah,
a lot
yeah,
of people feel like they can't say, actually, I would prefer to not have this recorded.
yeah. And especially, Rachel, if the bot is coming from somewhere else. If someone shows up to a meeting with another blah 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 AI note taker, and
Yeah,
again to your privacy point, if you don't know this AI note taker, where is it going, where is connected? Oof, and the trust. I think I also think exactly like you. Is
yeah,
if you are really open and really transparent, okay, but then you have to have an agreement before. Are we going to record? Yes, no. Doesn't feel like an obligation, but
yeah, right,
it's a choice.
right. Yeah. So I think that, it that also probably increases the level of unease people have over video meetings, right? It's when you're kind of like you start and you're like, ugh, I mean, I prefer to not have this bot in the call, right? But it's like it'll be interesting to see how it goes because it seems like, at least from what I see, companies are increasingly using them.
Yeah. And again, thinking about the potential opportunity, imagine that everything is recorded and then you can connect to this recording and do this analyze to all
Mhm,
the people and
mhm.
deliver to them. How much value do we have? And one thing that was very surprised, which was like, whoa, I didn't imagine. In a meeting, we do the recording and it shows the talking percentage of each person.
Mhm,
And it's like it shows you talk, I'm inventing a number, you talk 75% of the time.
mhm.
And say, oh, and then you can say, okay, this was a speech, it was okay. But then if this was not the intention, if it was a collaborative session and one person
Yeah,
is talking 70% of the time, maybe they're not aware.
yeah,
And so when you see the stat, they say, oh, I wasn't aware because I start talking and blah, 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 blah. And if someone don't tell you,
yeah.
yeah, absolutely. I'm curious, Rachel, if you had to give a tip or something to try to the people who was connected and listening to this video, what would that be? To invest 15 minutes in doing something to take out from today and do it from tomorrow.
Ah, yes. I mean, where to start? One tip. Yeah, I still
Or
think.
three, yeah? How many?
Yeah, no, I think. Um, I mean, I would challenge people to try out some of these AI coaching tools. Of course, everyone's welcome to try out Virtual Sapiens. We have a free trial.
We'll
But
put the link in the chat.
yeah, yeah, definitely. I think you don't know what you don't know.
Yes.
And what I've found is that a lot of people are very quick to point out what other people are doing wrong, and then are just not as aware of things that they could improve on. And so whether it's something as simple as like, oh, you do record all of your calls, great. Like go and watch yourself in one of those recordings and like what do you notice? Or like, run that through an AI coach and what kind of feedback are you getting? Like I'm not I'm not a perfect communicator. There's always something I can learn. And I think there's something almost everyone can learn to improve their ability to show up and connect and do so effectively.
Yeah. And that's beautiful because that's always the spirit. We are always getting better. We are always improving, and also the technology is changing.
Yeah.
So we have better technical setup, but then you have to learn that it's not all about the technical; it's also about you. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's endless, which is also exciting because if there was one single way to do everything perfect,
Yeah.
Very boring.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
There are so many options out there for people now. You really have a lot of choice in terms of how you show up and how you light yourself and how how you set up your microphone and your desk and your mouse. Like, what are you doing to empower yourself to be comfortable as well? Like if you're sitting on a couch with your laptop on your lap, it's going to be very hard to communicate and use hand gestures when you're holding your laptop.
Yes. Yes.
So,
Yes. So what I hear from you actually is also to be curious, as you are,
yeah,
to
yeah,
learn more and see. I'm curious about how do I come across. I'm curious about all these things I don't know. And as you said, you don't know what you don't know. So how many things there can be? So just be more curious. And then, of course, there are so many things that you can try. You try one, you like it, then you try the other. And
yeah,
then, of course, you can go to the full, but at least to get the idea to have this awareness that
yeah.
these things are important. It's not just, okay, let's do another meeting. So,
Yes.
yeah, absolutely. And if may add one thing, Rachel, which by the way, you showed me in this workshop. I still remember the point. What I would say is to take off our self view.
Yeah,
It's such a game changer.
yeah,
It's amazing. Of course, for example, now I don't see myself, but I know that we try. Which when we did the preparation again about the preparation, I know that I'm more or less in the middle. My
yeah,
hands are visible, and all these things. And you do the preparation, you see how you are, and then you focus on the person. Because if you are focusing on yourself, and we are it's addictive. I was looking all the time into myself view. I was
yeah,
like
yeah,
speaking to
yeah.
myself.
Yes. Oh my God. I mean, we're very fascinating to ourselves.
Yeah.
True.
And we have this in real time. When we talk to someone, we don't have a mirror in front of us, which
Yeah,
shows us how. So
yeah,
why should we have it on
yeah,
video?
exactly. Yes, no, exactly. Very well remembered.
Yeah. But there is one curious thing, which is actually on the phone. On the contrary, on the phone, I like to watch myself to see which what's the face that I put. So,
Uh-huh.
because one thing that I also read is that if you are smiling and you're talking, the
Oh,
person can feel that you are smiling.
yes,
Doesn't mean that you have to smile all the time. Just to
right.
see which kind of face am I putting when I talk to this person. So,
Yes, yeah,
yeah,
totally. Yeah, no, these things make a difference, whether the tone of voice is influenced, it's a physical thing, right? So if you're breathing properly, your tone of voice improves, it's more robust and amplified. If you're
yeah,
not breathing, like everything's a little thinner and faster.
yeah, yeah. And again, it's endless, endless.
Yeah.
We never stop learning.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah, that's what makes it all so exciting.
Yes. Let's check one more time if we have a few questions. Oh, Said is saying yes to watching your own recording. It's very cringe-worthy the first
Yeah.
time, but it gets easier and better over time. Do you want to elaborate a little bit more on this, Rachel?
Yeah, I mean, playback, video playback, game playback, right? This is a technique that performers and athletes have used since recordings have been available, right? As a dancer, we used to do it all the time because things often feel different from how they actually looked,
Yes.
right? And we'll often be surprised, like, oh, I thought I showed up and I thought I was like super over the top with my expression. And then you watch it and you're like, oh, it was actually like just the right amount,
Yes.
right? So, like, that feedback is what we need. You can do it again, you can do it yourself without the AI. If you have the recording and the time, just go through it yourself. But if you don't, and or you want that objective kind of third party review, have the AI review it, and it's just really surprising to see what comes up. We've heard that, from our users, some people prefer to use the AI just because it feels so much more objective and less judgmental, right?
Yeah.
It can be hard to send something to a colleague and have them comment on it
Yeah.
because it just feels very vulnerable. But if you use the AI, like the AI is just a robot, doesn't like it's not, It
Yeah,
feels a little safer.
there is no bias. Well, there is
There,
a
there can certainly be lots of bias, but if it's been trained properly, again, do your due diligence always with these tools.
yeah,
Has it been trained properly? What are some of the thresholds that it's been built around? But yeah, it's at least you can try it over and over again and get consistently referenced feedback.
exactly. Yeah, it's the same. You can, and it doesn't tire to watch over and over again. You can do it
Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah.
20 times
Yes.
until you're satisfied. Yeah,
Yes. Exactly.
absolutely. And again, it's a muscle. You do it the first time, it feels odd, then you do it again. And one thing that I did, for example, this Christmas, which by the way is inspired by my friend PJ Milani, who talks about things that don't scale. And
Uh-huh.
one thing that doesn't scale is sending video messages to the people you care about. I saw this. Yeah, I said, I'm doing something different. Instead of sending a message, I will send a video message
Yes.
to people who I
Yes.
care about.
Yes.
And I saw the message, and a few of them I said, no, I don't want to come across like this, and
Yeah.
I did it again.
Yes. 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 Totally.
Absolutely. So yeah, and time flies, Rachel, and this is a very exciting conversation. We could go on for hours.
Yeah.
Still, I would like to first of all ask you if people want to reach out to you or know more about all this amazing project. What's the best way to get in contact with you?
Yeah. LinkedIn is probably the easiest. So follow me, reach out, DM, whatever, connect on LinkedIn, and then our website is virtualsapiens.co, co, not .com. And like I said, we do have a free trial there. I'll also share a special link in the chat as well that people can use for this episode.
Mm, thank you. This is
Yeah,
very generous, and I hope people will take advantage of it and
yeah,
experiment, as you
yeah,
said.
yeah. Totally. Yeah. No, but this has been so fun. I think, there's so much in this conversation that,
Yeah,
hopefully
absolutely.
many takeaways for the audience.
And I have one final question, which is, what would you like to see more and less in the world?
Just in general.
Yes.
Just in general. Um, I, I don't know. I think this idea of like curiosity that you keep going back to really
Yeah.
resonates. Like I tend to think that like the skill of critical thinking is so important,
Yeah.
especially as we have like so much information fed to us from the media and from AI. Like we have to have the muscle to pause and double check, triple check, reflect, do some research, get curious
Yeah.
about the information that we're being fed. Um, and that like we can't just be taking things at face value. I would like to see more of the development of that skill.
Yeah. Absolutely. Which reminds me that we all have this, and our children, and which, by the way, congratulations, because now you're almost 1 year old
Yes.
mom.
Yes.
and, yeah, and you have the startup, you're CEO, co-founder,
Yeah.
plus mother. This has amazing journey, I'm sure. And to connect back with the kid, they are curious by nature, so we can learn from them so much.
Yeah. Exactly. Totally. Yeah. That's beautiful.
Yeah. And with this, we can maybe wrap up the conversation. I'm so glad that we found the time. Thank you so much, Rachel. It was super exciting.
Yeah.
And I hope that the people who connected also get some value. This was also absolutely for me. Thank you to all the people who send comments and who participate in the chat. Thank you so much for being there. And we'll be in touch.
That's good. All right. Thank you. Best for 2025.
Yeah, great way to start the year. Bye, everyone.
Bye.